We're now joined by Peter Bleksley, former Metropolitan Police Detective. Very, very good morning to you, Peter.
Good morning to you, Julia.
Always good to talk to you. Can we start, please, just first of all, because we're having lots of calls about cannabis, and there's lots of other conversations I want to have with you. But in terms of Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, he's commissioned a report, and the former Labour Justice Secretary, Lord Faulkner, basically says we should decriminalise cannabis, because it's part of an issue, particularly with police saying, oh, you smell of cannabis to young black youths, let's be honest, and saying, can we stop and search you? And this is creating tensions between the police and that particular community in London. Is that the answer, decriminalising cannabis?
Julia, let me make something perfectly clear here, if I may. I do not condone drug taking or encourage it in any way, shape or form. In fact, most drug takers that I've come across are the most tiresome and boring people imaginable. But this proposal is doing partly the right thing for exactly the wrong reason. What we need to do, and I'm sure you're going to disagree with me, is we need to legalise and regulate every single illegal drug. It's the fourth biggest industry in the world, and it would take me a couple of hours to explain it all. But if we had courageous politicians that legalised and heavily regulated all the industry, we could rip it from the grasp of organised crime, reduce harm, reduce murder, lower the prison population, raise billions upon billions in revenue, and educate our kids away from the scourge of drug taking.
I could not disagree with you more, Peter. The gangs are they'll just moved on to a bit more people trafficking or gun running for a start. Also, they're going to be wanting to deal those drugs to the people who can't buy them. That'll be the people who won't be able to afford the taxed goods, and they'll be getting them through them, or they'll be going to the under 18-year-olds. But also, I don't want to fund education, my kids' education in school, from another person out of their head on heroin and the tax they've paid for it. Plus, you're an ex-police officer, for goodness sake, Peter. Do you think all the people who are currently shoplifting and stealing and burglaring to pay for their drug habit are miraculously going to suddenly have the money to pay for their legal drugs once they're taxed and got VAT on them? Of course not. They're going to carry on all the criminal activity, aren't they? So I don't think that works at all.
The states will be awash with billions, and with regards to problematic drug users, we can get them the treatment, get them the help, and get their lives back on track.
There's the lowest success rate. I think it's about 1% success rate in getting people off drugs, unless they've already hit rock bottom and want to get away from them.
Because it's underfunded, and we've never tried this idea.
People who go to the Priory have got the same rate of success, for goodness sake.
You have to have an awful lot of money to go to the Priory.
Yeah, I'm just saying, they're not underfunded and they're still not having a decent success rate. Is it not? I mean, look, I know that police have more trouble realistically with, drunks and alcohol and violence, whereas you tend not to see, unless it's the drug dealers themselves, violence from, say, someone on cannabis so much. And I can understand the people's argument on that. But we've already got alcohol. It's normalised. It's part of the way our society, and indeed every society pretty much functions. Apart from, the few, religions, Islam, where you don't have religion. But adding extra effective legal drugs into the mix, that's just going to create more problems than solutions, isn't it?
No, not with a properly regulated environment. The harsh reality is this is a supply and demand industry, and the demand is increasing year upon year upon year. The current prohibition means that all we are doing is making criminals richer, and they are selling more drugs irresponsibly to people whom they want to take more and more and more and more addictive drugs. If people bought their drugs, sourced their drugs through a regulated environment, a regulated outlet, then the harm would be reduced dramatically. There wouldn't be these turf wars. The murder rate would come down dramatically. You're absolutely right when you say criminals would move on to other things, but they're already doing that anyway. So many criminals are online, and as you point out, people smuggling, fraud and such.
But you're self-certain. I can understand the argument for cannabis, and the argument that actually the cannabis has got much stronger. It's skunk now. It's not as mild as it used to be 20, 30, 40 years ago. And that's partly of the fact because it's been criminalised, or because it is criminalised, and therefore, you get more bang for your buck if you're importing it and it's stronger. And then people could actually go to, and this has happened in other countries, people could go to a shop and they could buy, weaker stuff or stronger, and they'd have more control of it. But when you're moving into, crack, cocaine, heroin. I think that would be madness.
No, it really wouldn't. And so many people move on from cocaine to crack, for example, because to change somebody's mental state is the most natural thing in the world. It's why people take sugar in their tea or coffee, read a book, go to a comedy store, watch a film. We do things to alter our mental state, go to the gym, all these kind of things. So people want to change their mental state through drugs, unfortunately. If the drugs that we were giving them were not so toxic, were better regulated, then there wouldn't be the need for I call under the kitchen syndrome.
Is there non-toxic crack or heroin?
Yeah, cocaine in its purest form, when it leaves what I will call the factory gate in the jungle, is generally speaking 100% pure and doesn't have the toxins in it, which it does by the time it reaches the pub toilet in London. Yeah.
Yeah, I vote no, but I'd love to hear everyone else's thoughts on it. He's a former police officer. Certainly an opinion that a lot of people hold and a lot of people would agree with. Give me a score. Tell us what if you agree with Peter in particular. I'd love to hear from you. 0344 499 1000. Let's move on and talk about other issues with crime because I had two interesting stories today. 6 different police chiefs, including the Met Police Chief and Manchester, Great Manchester, Merseyside, and all the big metropolitan chiefs. They basically warned the Prime Minister that his crime pledges are in peril because they're just not getting enough funding. Big concerns in the next spending review, in the autumn budget. We're going to be seeing Home Office budgets cut. We saw that under austerity with David Cameron and George Osborne. And they said you're not going to get 13,000 more police officers. You're not going to halve knife crime. You're not going to tackle women, violence against women and girls if you are basically not providing the funding. And we've also got senior figures, again, including the Met Chief, head of MI5, the National Crime Agency, saying that releasing prisoners early is posing a risk to public safety. These people are back on the streets, and a lot of them are violent criminals, and we were told they wouldn't be, but they are, and they are posing more of a danger to society. And they said we simply don't have the staffing to actually cope with the number of people being back on the streets. What do you say to those claims from, let's face it, people who know what they're talking about?
These are very worrying warnings from all the big hitters in law and order. As you've said, head of the Met, MI5, National Crime Agency, National Police Chiefs, writing to the government and saying the streets are going to become even less safe than they currently are. And that is a huge worry. The trouble is, political talk is cheap. Policing is expensive. And so much of the policing bill is made up by the wages that the officers are paid. Mark Rowley has already said he's going to have to lose 1,700 police officers. Yeah. And you, Julia, like I, travel on the largely lawless underground system a lot. And look at the harassment that goes on there, the graffiti, the assaults, and so much worse.
I'm mostly annoyed by the number of people who don't buy a ticket when they squeeze in behind me at the barrier.
Yeah. Tailgating, very apt at the moment. Yes, all of that. The streets of London and further afield are becoming increasingly lawless. We are all less safe than we used to be. And when the big hitters scream it to the government in a letter signed by all of them, then I'm afraid we all need to be deeply concerned.
Absolutely. Again, listen to what they're saying. And again, the Prime Minister wants to be judged on some of the things he's going to achieve. They're saying, well, you're not going to be able to achieve it. Let's also talk about specifics of what happened in Liverpool on Monday, this horrific collision, crash, attack. I think both people who felt it would have felt 65 people in total were injured, including children. One child still in hospital with a collapsed lung, a 4-year-old, for goodness sake, after a man basically just drove his car, apparently deliberately, in and out of the crowd, smashing into people. 4 people left under his car. And this was a man who's been held he's been in custody since he was basically sort of rescued from a mob of people who, I think, understandably what were wanting to attack him. Police have until midday today, so in just 17 minutes time, to finish questioning him. He has already, we're told, been arrested on numerous charges of attempted murder, dangerous driving offences, but also driving under the influence of drugs. But also the police say they couldn't work, people couldn't work out why his car was able to enter this road that was full of people as part of this victory parade for Liverpool winning the Premier League. And they believe that he tailgated, as you mentioned, tailgating an ambulance going to help a member of the crowd, and they tailgated through there. What do you make of what some are saying may well have been police and council failings in keeping people safe? And what do you make of what we've been told so far about the man in custody?
Yesterday, Assistant Chief Constable Jenny Sims told us all not to speculate. So I won't speculate, I'll deal with facts. And the fact is that Ford Galaxy got into Water Street, which was a road that had been blocked, is the direct result of a catastrophic failure of the security operation. It simply should not have been allowed to happen. And when Sims says we had no intelligence that such an attack was going to take place, well, that really is a nonsensical thing to say, because with any major security operation, you tell everybody, expect the unexpected.
Yep.
Be on your guard. And it would appear that somebody has very much dropped their guard in this regard.
Is there an argument where, and again, I've kind of been of that view for many years in terms of, terror attacks, and this wasn't a terror, but that was what a lot of people, and let's face it, including the police, would have suspected at the current time, having seen those videos, the car, appearing to drive quite deliberately into groups of people in the crowd. That you can only prevent so much. So, for instance, again, we have all these protections, supposedly the theatre of security when we get on a plane. So, I've got a 120 millilitre bottle of water. That will be deadly. 100 millilitres, absolutely fine. I mean, it's abject nonsense, a lot of this stuff. But I can get on a train, I can get on a bus anytime. That's not a problem with these things. We remove the waste bins from train stations for years because of IRA attacks using waste bins. We do this. We put up barriers. I mean, we work here just on London Bridge, and we got off the London Bridge, Westminster Bridge tax. Those massive big barriers everywhere. And then we have some attacks at some Christmas markets, so they put bollards and barriers around there. At the end of the day, we're always preparing for the last attack, whether it's a terror attack or a criminal attack or someone who's drunk or off their head on drugs or whatever it is. But you actually can't always protect everyone all the time. Isn't that the issue?
But no, there is no such thing as 100% security, but you have to be on guard. You have to have the ability to see round the corner and to expect the unexpected and always be prepared for that.
Yeah.
The whole face of these multi-victim events has changed. 30, 40 years ago, the terrorists had bullets and they had bombs. So you would look for those and take out the terrorists when they were in possession of those. Now, unfortunately, mass casualty attacks use everyday items like knives and cars. Yeah. And so it is very much more difficult for law enforcement. And in that regard, they have my sympathy. But when you're on an event like this, it is sometimes very easy to be swept along by the euphoria, by the joy, by the happiness. If you're policing it, stewarding it, private security, you have to switch off from all of that.
Yeah, and especially if you're a Liverpool fan yourself and you're celebrating.
Yeah, well, you're there to do a job. You're not there to celebrate. If you want to celebrate, ditch your uniform, take a day's holiday and go and have a drink with your mate.
Can I just ask you just finally, there's been a lot of criticism, and I've been called every name under the sun since Monday night for questioning why the police chose to reveal that the man in custody, a 53-year-old man from the Liverpool area, was a white British man. We don't normally get given the nationality or the ethnicity of suspects, and I've checked all the Merseyside police's recent tweets about any arrests or charges they've made. Not one of them, not a single one of them mentions the ethnicity or nationality of the people who've been arrested or charged. What do you make of former Met Superintendent Dal Babu? And he said that the decision was correct in this occasion to counter misinformation, but it could be exploited by the far right. He says it doesn't take rocket science to predict what will happen in the future. the far right will twist this and say, right, you've named the race because it's a white person. Why aren't you naming the race of the next person? He said it will present some difficulties and challenges in the future. He said it's really important that people don't see it as a precedent because every incident will be different. What do you say to that?
Every day when I don't hear the name of Del Babu is a good day. What essentially happened is that His Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary did a report into Southport and all aspects of it, and they handed down a directive that communication has to be better.
Yeah.
So in that regard, Merseyside were doing what they were told to do by the Inspectorate.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right to point out that a benchmark has been set now, as I see it. So should or when, unfortunately, there is another mass casualty attack, it will be very interesting to see if a police service says, if this were to be, that the person arrested was brown, came from whatever country, etc., etc.
Yeah, I mean, they've just set themselves up, haven't they? But there we are, Peter Bleksley. It's been a very interesting interview. So good to see you. Thank you very much for joining us, former Met Police Detective.